through this. I promise you, this is the best video that you are going to watch on the subject matter. Straight the fuck up. And that's how you know, because it only has 100,000 views, okay? It's not like a fucking highlight reel of like Johnny Depp looking sexy. It's not a highlight reel of like rad lib shit talking about how like Amber Heard is the sole victim in the situation. It's simply a very good and non-sensationalized approach to this case.
I'd argue the amount of attention we give to those who are good-looking and charismatic enough to wind up on a large or small screen is completely disproportionate to the amount of value they really bring to the world. We would argue there's no point in bemoaning that which is never going to change. Maybe in an ideal world, it would be the faces of soup kitchen volunteers we'd see plastered on the covers of all our magazines. But this just isn't in keeping with human nature. It is, of course, the people we see frequently, albeit not in person in this case, that we develop an interest in. The fact that interest for many of us goes beyond what project they're making next and into areas like how large their homes are, what parties they're going to, and who they're dating may not be strictly logical, but it is in keeping with human nature, so there's not much to be gained from trying to fight it. Having said that, over the last 20 years or so, the culture of celebrity watching has maybe started to get a bit out of hand. As mobile technology has improved exponentially, so too has the ability of notable people to put more of themselves out to the world, as well as the ability of paparazzi to hound those with less exhibitionistic tendencies. And it's in this area of entertainment where we begin to get a glimpse of a darker side of celebrity obsession. Any paparazzo knows snapping a photo of a star during a moment of weakness, or better yet, profound existential pain, can be worth just as much as snagging an exclusive shot of an A-list wedding. Because at the same time as we find an escape in fantasizing about people with lives so much better than our own, there's an even deeper satisfaction that comes from the realization that below the surface, the lived experience of some of these same people may be just as crappy as ours. In some ways, maybe even worse. And when it comes to train wrecks and the personal lives of celebrities spiraling out of control, to an extent they become a seemingly endless soap opera for the masses to consume as each episode plays out in the media, there has been no better example in recent years than the short-lived marriage and ever-enduring separation and feud between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Though just because the saga has and is now continuing to play out in the media as the warped form of entertainment that has just been described, don't mistake this video's preamble as insinuating the accusations made by Mr. Depp and Miss Heard, or the issues surrounding said accusations, are any laughing matter. And also don't be lulled into some sort of illusion that just because the subject of today's video is a messy celebrity divorce, it will somehow be shallower than some of the more customary criminological subjects explored in other installments from this channel.
Wild thing is Kim K was caught leaking her own location for paparazzi. What do you mean caught? They do this. This is common practice. When you see people get snapped by paparazzi, more often than not, if they look good, that is on purpose. They told the paparazzi to be there. If you see them look bad, and in a lot of instances, like they stop this practice regardless, they find it to be a gross violation of people's privacy, which it is. If they like look terrible at the beach or something because they're like kneeling over or whatever, like normal humans do, that's stuff that the paparazzi finds on their own. But all of the other, like the Britney Spears style paparazzi shit is it's gone. It's the days of the past. But the Kardashians themselves absolutely weaponize paparazzi regularly. And now, instead of weaponizing the paparazzi, they just have their own fucking marketing, and they have their own show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, where basically you do the exact same thing. They make content out of their own personal experiences that they craft a specific narrative around, including, like, if you followed this at all, the Kanye West saga, the Ray J sex tape saga, the Roblox saga. The latest season of the Keeping Up with the Kardashians is completely fake. 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. Everything from like Kim being like, "Oh my God, my son saw, the fucking."
Good streamer.
You're completely wrong. I'm 1,000,000% right on this. Okay, the idea that there was like a Roblox sex tape out there or some shit like, and then like the kids saw it, and then Kim was like losing her shit. That was planet. It's not real. 1,000,000%. And if you believe that, I don't know what to tell you. That's crazy. But what is real that we are going to be watching now is a very real and very public case of domestic abuse, and one side basically dominating the narrative in the build-up to this defamation case that we've been following this past week, and how new evidence and new information and a judge that isn't like completely and psychotically, obsessively on one side, allowing information to flow through to the public, and kind of reframing the narrative of someone who was deeply disturbed and certainly abusive as well, getting their day in court, I guess, in a defamation suit, where Johnny Depp is able to reframe the narrative around what Amber Heard had claimed he was doing.
If only. Truth be told, today's case is one with so many events, claims, witness statements, recordings, and other miscellaneous pieces of evidence, that one of the most challenging parts about making the video has been figuring out where to begin, where to end, and what to include in between. As you likely know, it is a domestic violence case, and in terms of what has played out in court, it is one comprised of 14 incidents. Covering all 14 in enough detail to be fair to both sides would be unrealistic for the format, and covering them all in a manner that is relatively expedient and digestible would result in analysis so superficial it would render itself pointless. So what we have done instead is narrowed it down from 14 to 5 incidents, choosing the ones to keep based on how significant to the case they are overall, the amount of raw evidence and witness accounts there are pertaining to them to limit the amount of he said, she said, and that provide a decent enough spread of information that might cast either side in a negative or positive light, in the hope that doing so will leave you with more or less the same stance you'd have if you went through every piece of information involved with the case cover to cover, though there are plenty of resources in the description for if you're not so sure of that once all is said and done. Even just the 5 key incidents contain enough details to get very convoluted very quickly, so to try to make things as easy to follow as possible, we're going to run through them twice. The first time we'll tell the story of Depp and Heard's relationship and the 5 chosen incidents.
It's a very good video for this reason.
And entirely from the perspective of Amber Heard's lengthy witness statement, taking all of her accusations completely at face value. After that, we'll take a look at each incident from more of an investigative perspective, presenting Depp's version of events as well as evidence that both sides have put forward to support their case. And then there will be a final section where we put forward some choice odds and ends in the case. Details that did not fit naturally into our 5 chosen incidents, but that we felt could be seen as egregious to leave on the cutting room floor. As you can probably tell by this point, we have quite a lot to get through, so let's get started.
Don't get triggered when you see this is going to look the first half of this. This is the first half of this is going to make it seem like it's very pro Amber, by the way, because it's just admittedly only covering Amber Heard's perspective in the first half.
And for the 2011 feature, The Rum Diary. The film, based on Hunter S. Thompson's novel of the same name, would go on to perform poorly at the box office, receive mixed reviews at best from critics, and ultimately prove to be totally forgettable in every way but one. It facilitated the introduction of one of the century's biggest movie stars, Johnny Depp, to the up-and-coming movie starlet, Amber Heard.
Oh, God. Why did she have to happen? Just when I was doing so good without her.
By 2012, Depp and Heard were an item. The 23-year age gap raised some eyebrows, but love knows no boundaries. And even if it did, most 50-year-old men are not quite as appealing to 27-year-old women as Johnny Depp. In 2015, Depp and Heard married, tying the knot with a small ceremony on Depp's private island in the Bahamas. To the outside world, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's union was as picturesque as one would expect a Hollywood couples to be. But as we now know, below the surface, the relationship was no fairy tale. By Heard's account, as early as 2013, a pattern had begun, which should sound very familiar to anyone who has been unfortunate enough to fall victim to domestic violence. One of abuse, followed by remorse, then reconciliation and a period of calm, before the cycle repeats itself.
That was a great band, by the way.
While most of the time, Depp exhibited the gentle, quirky demeanor that the public knew him for and she had fallen in love with, he had also begun losing his lifelong battle with substance abuse, regularly drinking to excess, as well as using a wide range of illicit drugs. And often when he was under the influence, a much darker side of him emerged, one that he and Heard would come to call the monster. When the monster took over, Depp would become wickedly mean-spirited, directing verbal and often physical abuse at Heard. In the days that followed, he would apologize and ultimately convince Heard that he was determined to get back on the wagon. But as time went on, the monster only seemed to grow stronger, and the damage it inflicted only more severe. One toxic element that had begun to emerge in the relationship quite early on was an intense jealousy within Johnny Depp. He would develop suspicions that Heard was having an affair with just about any male co-star she was working with, and was remarkably sensitive about the prospect of her being involved in physically intimate scenes for a man who had been a screen actor for 30 years. This jealousy was the primary driver behind the first incident we're covering in detail. On May 24th, Heard told Depp over the phone that she would be filming such a scene with James Franco for a film they were working on called The Adderall Diaries. Depp responded angrily. Later that day, Heard waited for Depp in his private jet that was set to fly from Boston to LA. When he arrived...
For the record, this, out of all of the allegations of abuse, I think the reason why I say that there is mutual abuse, and the reason why I have said and maintained the position that Johnny Depp is not like the perfect hero or anything like that, is because of this instance. The private jet instance is one where, one, there are additional victims, and two, I believe Amber Heard's side is more true than Johnny Depp's side, and you'll understand why.
He was clearly high. During the flight, Depp began to taunt Heard with lewd and humiliating comments, many of them insinuating she was having sex with James Franco. Heard was particularly mortified by Depp's behaviour, as he had multiple of his friends and personnel on the plane, and she was dismayed that he would degrade her so viciously in their company. Depp began challenging Heard to state how much she enjoyed getting off with James Franco on set, and after she refused to answer several times, he slapped her in the face. At a later point on the flight, as Heard got up to walk to another part of the plane while Depp was taunting her, he kicked her in the back, hard enough to make her fall to her hands and knees. Later, he took off one of his boots and threw it at her. At one point, he also threw a fork at her. Eventually, he went to the bathroom and passed out, having been drinking heavily throughout the flight, in addition to being under the influence of whatever drugs he had taken before boarding. This was the most extreme incident up until this point, and Heard had initially been resolute in ending the relationship because of it. But after repeated expressions of remorse, as well as promises that he would undergo detox, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard ultimately wound up back together. The second chosen...
What the fuck? Is this real? Yo, that is the most gross shit I've ever fucking... Yo, that's so gross, dude. That is gross as fuck, dude. Stop hitting on me. I'm really shy.